What movie death scene is burned into your memory? The death scene in Saving Private Ryan where the knife slowly goes into the guy's chest. It's still hard to watch even now. Yes, I think this one for me also. It's so visceral and horrific, even if it isn't as gory as others. Also, the medic is close second. Both of those scenes were wild, but the medic death was intense. Shot in the liver, and knew he was going to die. The actor played that so well. The curb stomp in American History X. Oh god, yeah. I haven't watched that movie in many years, but I can still hear the sound. When Bubba was dying in Forrest Gump, him saying I wanna go home hit me deep. Even though I know he was acting, I wanted to reach through the screen and hug his fear and pain away. All those young boys dying in the jungle must have been so terrified. Sometimes when people go to Vietnam, they go home to their mamas without any legs. Sometimes they don't go home at all. That's a bad thing. That's all I have to say about that. Seeing Bubba die was horrible, but to hear an otherwise very verbose and upbeat Forrest say that line and just stop ripped me apart. Instead of telling the story he just doesn't want to talk about it. You can just hear the loss in his voice and the devastation. Ghost ship. When Cable snaps and cuts bunch of people who were happily dancing on deck in half. I watched this as a teen, and as soon as I read your comment, I instantly remembered it as vividly as the first time. IDK, what is about that scene? I have watched a lot of horror movies, war movies, sad dramas, but there is something about that scene that sticks out. Maybe the nice, serene music, romantic night at sea, people happily dancing. I just can't forget that and then bodies falling down. And if I recall correctly, Cube has similar scene with some cable slicing people and few other similar scenes in other movies, but nothing came close to this one. Spock, I have been, and always shall be, your friend. Of all the souls I have encountered in my travels, his was the most human. Funny, I feel like that too, along with Data and TNG. I think it's the struggle to understand humanity that makes them so human and relatable. Artax, in the Neverending Story, completely wrecked 7-year-old me. Artax, stupid horse. You've gotta move or you'll die. Move please. I won't give up. Absolutely heartbreaking. Off. I didn't remember the exact words said, only him pleading. I knew it was my dog's final day when he couldn't move at all. When my attempts to help him up didn't work, I remember being so desperate and scared that I was yelling and begging him to get up and move. He passed away a couple months ago. Always will be my best boy. Brooks's death in Shawshank Redemption. Can't get it out of my head. Brooks was here. Just the fact that he was so lost in the world without family or friends at the end of life pierced deep. It has to be the face melting in Raiders of the Lost Ark. I mean, it was perfect. Would have been the perfect time for a Nivea product placement. When in The Mummy Returns, Imhotep realizes what Rick and Evie have is love, and he looks at Anck-Sunamun imagining the same, but she just nopes out, and he yeets himself to the underworld. Also, the man who dies from flesh-eating beetle. Oh, that scarab death was horrifying. Yeah, when the mummy was mentioned my mind immediately went to the scarab scene. What a great movie. I might do a rewatch right now actually. John, Green Mile. I'm awful tired boss. He killed them with their love. John Coffey quotes are devastating. The death of Maximus in Gladiator. I will see you again, but not yet. Not yet. Cute tears every time. The Mist, that ending still gets me to this day. For real. Imagine you thought you gave your child and your other survivors a mercy killing, but learned you were minutes away from rescue. Also, the army comes up from behind them, meaning they were driving away from salvation the whole time too. When Percy executes Dell by using dry sponge in the Green Mile. Percy is just one of the worst characters ever put on paper. What a despicable scumbag from every direction. Every scene with him is him just being a complete psycho. Even among Stephen King books he's easily one of the worst. Funny thing is the actor who played him seems to be equally as scummy. Not a movie, but there was an episode of MASH I saw as a kid that traumatizes me to this day. The whole episode, which I haven't seen since I was about 9, so forgive any incorrect details, is about a group of army and civilians hiding from the enemy. One lady has a chicken, and they keep telling her to keep it quiet, because if it gives away their position they'll all be dead. We find out she smothered the chicken to death to save everyone. But the horror twist is that the soldier telling the story had replaced the actual source of the noise, her human baby, with a chicken, because it was so horrible. I have children now, and the thought of making that choice makes me sick to my stomach. Pretty sure that was the finale. The most watched non-sports television program of all time. I remember this all too well. We watched MASH religiously. Oddly, what sticks out to me is how this was so close in time to the novel 79 and later film 82's Sophie's Choice. This was literally the next year. My brother, my captain, my king. They will watch for us coming in the White Tower, but you will not return. Hereditary, where Charlie got decapitated by the telephone pole. Scrolled for this one. The mother scream will always stick with me. And then the cut to the head on the pavement. The young man in front of his father in Pan's Labyrinth. Brutal. Every time I read Pan's Labyrinth on Reddit I have to tell the story that this movie was rated for 12 years old kids the first week it came out here in Germany. The movie poster makes it look like a fairy tale. Rufio in Hook. That movie is such an emotional roller coaster. Boromir, Lord of the Rings dude. Yes. And it finishes of his arc so well. Initially headstrong and dismissive of the ring's lure, succumbing to it for that instant, then wanting to redeem himself, protecting the hobbits. The fact the first thing he says when Aragorn gets to him isn't his big my captain, my king or some Gondor stuff. It's they've taken the little ones thinking of the innocent before anyone or himself. Absolutely perfect. After watching the extended cut and seeing that Boromir is actually a great dude and great brother, it makes his death more tragic. The gigantic burden his dad put on him was unfair. Culkin in My Girl. I'm amazed at how far I had to scroll for this. It's probably because it was the first time I really saw a main character die. Maybe it was because it was a kid around my age at the time, and it wasn't an action movie death. The glass is falling gets me every time, but what kills me is when she runs into the funeral and insists that he needs his glasses. This is a girl who sees death literally daily, and yet she can't really process it when it's someone she loves. Even thinking about it brings me back to the way it felt to see it the first time. And the mood ring. Why is nobody bringing up the mood ring? Broke my little kid heart. Wilson, I'm sorry. This was necessary from a storytelling perspective. In fantasy novels there is often a portal that leads to the land of fantasy. For instance, a wardrobe, a flying ship or a crashing plane. When the protagonist leaves the land of fantasy they must give up whatever possessions they gained during their time in order to return to reality. Wilson was a storytelling device to allow the character to speak to something else without looking like he had gone crazy. Having saved himself, Wilson would act like an anchor tying him to the island. The end of the movie was about him letting go of his old life, cementing the changes he underwent while on the island, and becoming a new person where anything was possible. In a sense, he grew up. Had Wilson remained, he would have forever remained with part of the island, and wouldn't have been able to grow in the same way. By removing Wilson, he was given room to grow as a person and character. Remember, the next thing that happened after he lost Wilson was he was saved by a passing ship, and he was transported back from the land. If fantasy into reality, that transition would have been worse if he still had mementos from the island. I never considered this perspective. With that context, seems like the new Wilson he has at the end of the film represents the transition into his new life, now completely separated from his former as his wife moved on. The death of the personal assistant in that Jurassic World movie, a complete side character that did nothing wrong, barely in a few scenes, gets likely the most graphic and prolonged death in the entire franchise. They really made sure to show you how terrified she was and how brutally she died. It was literally like 90 seconds on screen watching her struggle in agony and terror before being swallowed. It was honestly kinda screwed up. Especially because there was a comedic moment immediately before and after the scene. It's like they want you to somehow enjoy watching this completely innocent side character die horribly. Thank you. This bothered the crap out of me. Like, is this the death Vincent D'Onofrio's character was supposed to have? Was there a cutscene of her being crappy to the kids or something? There was apparently scenes that showed her neglecting to look after the kids because she was doing other things, but nothing nearly bad enough to warrant that death. Bridge to Terabithia. Watched it again recently at 22 years old and cried my eyes out the same as I did when I first saw it as a kid. Can't believe I had to scroll this far down. That movie messed me up when I was young. The first movie I remember getting an actual emotional reaction from me. Bob from Stranger Things killed me inside. Bob deserved better. He was perfect for Joyce, goddamn it. Also Alexei. Poor Russian spy Alexei. Alexei's death also hit me really hard. He was so happy when Master Oogway rejoins the universe. For some reason, I felt so affected by Oogway, everything he said, and his death scene. I had to look into if his beliefs and sayings were taken from some established philosophy, and that's how I found Taoism. Looks like the Kung Fu Panda wasn't Oogway's last student. The dog getting shot in Old Yeller. It's a really old movie / book, but it still always gets me. Same with my dog Skip. He doesn't get shot though, he just dies of old age. Still sad. The dog from I'm Legend got me. I haven't seen that movie since it came out and don't remember anything else, but I still remember the dog's death. Of Mice and Men when George killed Lenny. It was so much worse in the book though. In the movie he pulls the gun and bam, it's done. In the book he has the gun out and aimed with his finger on the trigger, just agonizing over it for so long before he can bring himself to do it. Yes, I can't actually remember the movie very well. The book though, some scenes will be engraved in my brain forever. Sam the dog in I'm Legend. I assumed she was a male dog up until the point Neville calls her Samantha, and for some reason that destroyed me. Great little sucker punch in the writing. The actress for Sam passed away 1 month ago. /3 great dog, great life. Bing Bong's death in Inside Out. Damn it, Pixar. Take her to the moon for me. Everybody always mentions this quote, but the one that gets me is when he realizes what he's gonna do and says one more time, I got a feeling about this one. Mufasa. Lost my dad at a very young age. Don't know why I had to scroll so far to find this. Simba's reaction crawling under Mufasa's paw, crying for help from somebody. Anybody gets me every time. Captain Kirk's dad in Star Trek 2009, when he crashes the ship into Nero's thingy. You just see him get flung toward the camera as the ship explodes, and I always thought it was kinda spooky for a Star Trek movie. Chris Hemsworth is only in that movie for like 5 minutes, but man is it ever a good 5 minutes. You know your father was a captain of a starship for 12 minutes. He saved 800 lives. That movie was absolutely phenomenal and the intro sequence had me on the edge of my seat. Arne's self-sacrifice at the end of Terminator 2 deserves a thumbs up. I know now why you cry. Private Pile. Full Metal Jacket. It just looks so damn real, and I totally didn't expect it first time round. I was looking for this comment. Pyle's death really set the tone for the movie going forward. I feel like Kubrick wanted to give the viewer a sense of the post-shock numbness that we see Joker feeling throughout his entire time in Vietnam, right up to the sniper scene. Amazing cinematography. A shocking closure to the first half of the movie. It's the stark contrast between that scene and the boots are made for walking prostitute scene. Kubrick doesn't give the viewer much time to process what just happened. One of my all-time favorite films. The scene from The Brave Little Toaster, where the air conditioner goes off the deep end and explodes himself. I'm not an invalid. I like being stuck in this wall. It's my function. Update. I had no idea this movie was so influential to other people too. I'm glad I'm not alone, because I don't know many people who've even heard of it. I'm an adult, and I was so traumatized by this movie that I'm afraid to take another shot at it. Sinister, the lawnmower tape, where the child runs over her family with a mower while they are laying in the yard at night. The noise gets me every single time, no matter how many times I watch it, and even though I know it's coming. Nonchalantly pushing the family members tied to pool chairs into the pool, that was pretty creepy. Loved the music in that movie, so haunting and weird. It was perfect for all those Super 8 scenes. Most of the deaths in the 80s The Blob movie, they did a good job of making every death look painful, like people still alive as the skin is sucked off their face. That little boy getting killed, so graphic. The woman in the phone booth, trying to call the sheriff, and then seeing him in the blob outside the door. When Scar killed Mufasa, and then Simba begging his dad to wake up. Dad, come on, you gotta get up. Dad, we gotta go home. Vader at the end of Return of the Jedi. I was maybe 5. The Star Wars trilogy are the first movies I have memory of. Watching his redemption arc and subsequent sacrifice really left an impact on young kid me. Tell your sister, you were right. That's my absolute favorite quote of the entire Star Wars saga. In so few words, tells you so much about Vader, the original trilogy and everything that Vader and Anakin meant as characters. Shout out to I'm No GD by Ahsoka in Southwestern Rebels, my second place. Sebastian Shaw and Ashley Eckstein are treasures for the franchise. Grave of the Fireflies, that scene is burned into my memory. I think the beginning scene, where he's just lying there, waiting to die along with the other forgotten people is really profound alone. Then the movie goes into his life, and what a loving and vibrant child he was, and ends with the scene of him dying there, and nobody caring at all, until his sister comes to get him. Ugh, so heart-wrenching. It's worse knowing that the movie is based on an autobiography. He killed the character of himself at the end, because he never forgave himself for surviving where his sister did not. The toilet guy in Jurassic Park 1. Donald Gennaro, the lawyer who was so easy to dislike in the movie, but was actually a pretty decent guy, and did not get eaten in the book. Artax please. You're letting the sadness of the swamps get to you. You have to try. You have to care. That one with Scene Bean. You have any idea how little that narrows it down? The old man and woman jumping off a cliff in Midsommar. Every death in that movie was freaking horrifying. The dude who was still alive with his back flayed open and chickens eating him alive. Horrifying. The one dude who was killed and his face skinned and then worn as a mask to kill another dude. Horrifying. Trapped in a bear skin and burned alive while a creepy ass cult and your girlfriend watch. Horrifying. Glenn from The Walking Dead. I will never forget that moment. That scene fricked me up so bad I had to stop watching the show. You and a million others, no joke. Tom Hanks' death in Saving Private Ryan. His struggle to say the words "earn this" and seeing the impact of those words on Private Ryan's face amidst the chaos of the Germans assaulting their position. It's a very powerful scene, ESP, when coupled with the final scene of the movie. Old Private Ryan asking his wife if he lead a good life kills me every single time. Where the two girls get trapped on a sunbed in Final Destination 3. That's got me screwed up to this day. Rue from The Hunger Games. Same. Also Prim's death. Finnick's death in the book freaked me up. I'm glad I didn't have to see it as brutally as it was described. Point in the book. I was very sad when he died. BC, he's my favorite character in the series. Not a movie, but a death scene in GOT where the mountain crushes a guy's face with his bare hands. You mean a bear in Martel? That was brutal and so tragic. All he had to do was stop toying with him, and he'd still be alive. Indira Varma's shriek of horror really punctuated the whole thing too. Imagine if his daughter's characters had been written as well as a bear in Martel. Bayonet scene from Saving Private Ryan. For a second you realize there are just two men from different places who, only because of their affiliation, must kill the other to survive. One of the hardest deaths I've ever seen on screen, and that movie opens with an accurate depiction of Normandy. Akira, when the guy gets bitten by dogs and gunned down at the beginning. That or giant flesh baby Tetsuo, which I still find hard to look at. Korra's death always gets me. Crushed to death, to the point of just liquefying. Just for wanting to comfort Tetsuo. Bone Tomahawk, when the guy's ripped in half. Can't believe how long I had to scroll to find this. I thought it would be number 1 lol. Goose in Top Gun. He's all happy with his family playing Great Balls of Fire on the piano, and then he's dead. Dobby. Fred. Well, I don't think you see his death, but his family's reaction when they find him is just devastating. Fred's death in the book is horrifying, especially Percy's reaction, considering, in the books, Percy had cut his entire family off 4 years before the final battle and had only just rejoined them. Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, when Boromir dies whilst defending Merry and Pippin. Something about him keeping them safe, even when he was shot 3 times, to make up for what he had done trying to take the ring from Frodo. Then his conversation with Aragorn as he lays dying, and he recognizes him as Gondor's king. Pet Cemetery when Gage gets hit by the 18-wheeler. Jojo Rabbit, those red shoes. Cedric's death in Harry Potter. Watching his father screaming over his lifeless body after just seeing them say goodbye before going into the maze. God, what a heartbreaking scene. My boy. The little sister in Grave of the Fireflies. I still haven't forgiven Miyazaki for making that sad of a movie. Yes, Isao Takahata directed that one, though. Roy Batty, Tears in Rain scene from Blade Runner. The snap in Infinity War really does work exactly as it's meant to. That creeping, silent horror is perfect. Steve. Sometimes I think about The Lovely Bones, especially when I talk to strangers. That movie upped my paranoia when I was a kid. Have you read the book? I adore Stanley Tucci, and he played a monster very well, but the book is so much better than the movie. The part where Will Smith had to kill his dog in I'm Legend. It was awful and so emotional. In Titanic, when First Officer Murdoch shoots himself and his body falls into the sea. Seeing that as a kid was quite jolting. Ida and Isidore Strauss. They're the uncredited old couple who drown holding each other on the bed as their cabin fills. While not covered, their true backstory is that Ida had a spot on a lifeboat, but Isidore did not. Her last known words were, "Where you go, I go." That couple are the reason my wife won't watch Titanic. Red Wedding. Goatee has some intense ones. Shireen Baratheon was awful. Mr. Stark, I don't feel so good. Ironic that the Spider-Man death scene broke the web. Hereditary piano wire scene. Frosty melting into a puddle. I was inconsolable. Lol, the humans xenomorph hybrid getting sucked out the window in Alien Resurrection. This one is out of left field, but in Return of the Jedi there is a scene during the forest fight when the Empire is just cleaning everyone's clock. There is a scene where 2 Ewoks get knocked off their feet due to an explosion. One gets up and turns to the other one, but they won't get up. The Ewok makes a sad noise, and I'm pretty sure I heard them say "Mama, Mama." I don't know why, but that stuck with me. The scene in Scream, where the girl was running from the killer and she ran into the garage. It was closed, so she tried to go out the cat door and the killer opened the garage door while she was stuck in it. My first movie death scene seared into my brain. Not a movie, but the bit in Dexter when at the end of the series he comes home, thinks he's killed the bad guy and all is well with the world. But he walks into the bathroom and his wife is dead and the baby is sitting there crying in the wife's blood. Honestly, that hit me incredibly hard, seeing the baby there, alone, crying for its dead mother. My first child had not long been born when I seen it, which no doubt contributed, but that scene has absolutely stood out to me in a horrific way for all these years. Grace, I know I promised you I was coming home. Size looks like I'm gonna have to break that promise. It gets me every single time. William Dafoe in Platoon. So dramatic it's almost funny. Ned Stark. I thought for certain they wouldn't kill the patriarch of the show. Was I wrong? Andy Serkis's death in King Kong. One of the most disgusting deaths I have seen. And since I hate bugs it just makes me squirm every time I think about it. Fun fact about the scene. Apparently, he forgot about his death scene and brought his children, like they were really young, like 8, 10 years old or so, to the pre-screening event and absolutely terrified them when they saw their dad get eaten by slug monsters. Giddo's death in Life is Beautiful, La Vita Bella. I spent the rest of the movie with my mouth open and my heart rejecting that he's actually dead, and my brain kept trying to theorize ways he could survive and that he'll appear to hug his wife and kid again. Then the credits rolled and I couldn't stop crying for a long time. Optimus Prime, Transformers, the movie, 1986. I saw that in theaters. Was not prepared. Anytime a dog dies in a movie. I forget if it's a German or American group that gets ambushed, but there's one scene in Fury where a convoy of tanks gets ambushed by kids with rocket launchers. One guy comes falling out of a tank on fire and without a shred of hesitation shoots himself in the head.